I contacted one of Juan Guaido's aides this morning and he sent me back a message saying, critical situation. This might be our way to freedom. Well, it might be or it might not be. The situation in Venezuela has deteriorated since I was last there in February. There have been power cuts that last for several days, oil shortages and a lack of cash to buy oil in if they can't produce themselves. That's because of American sanctions. Many in Venezuela say that everything's happening is because of this government. That's not completely true. The decline is because of Maduro's policies. But there is so much pressure from here. When this news of what seemed to be a coup or a coup attempt was this morning, then the American administration lost no time. Mike Pence, John Bolton, all the senior administration people here saying, you know, we support this. We're not behind it, of course, but we support it. But do the military support it? Juan Guaido has a lot of supporters amongst the people, but the military, apparently they are pressuring Nicolas Maduro. There is talk of negotiations, but he has always said he will not step down, he will not step aside. And it doesn't seem that the military at the moment are with the opposition. It may be that the launch of what they're calling Operation Freedom, it may be that it's just a bit premature. By mid-morning, it had turned nasty. Supporters of Venezuela's opposition leader Juan Guaido were on the streets of Caracas. At first, security forces responded to rocks with tear gas. But then they used their armoured vehicles as weapons. 2 protesters are thought to have been hit. The majority of the security forces, it seems, remain loyal to the government of Nicolas Maduro, despite the opposition's early morning call for the military to swap sides.
Pueblo de Venezuela, muy buenos días.
Good morning, Venezuela. The man who says he's president surrounded himself with soldiers near an airbase in Caracas to declare Operation Freedom.
Nuestras fuerzas armadas.
Today, our armed forces, courageous soldiers, courageous patriots, courageous men who follow the Constitution, have responded to our call.
A surprise arrival. Leopoldo Lopez, Guaido's political mentor, who was under house arrest for 5 years, until soldiers freed him just this morning.
This is the moment for all Venezuelans, with or without uniforms, everyone out on the streets. Police, military, judges, prosecutors, public employees, the Venezuelan people, out on the streets. In Venezuela and across the world, the call is global.
Come out onto the streets, come without fear, shouted soldiers wearing blue armbands to show they're with the opposition. Several thousand people heeded the call, gathering in Altamira, just near the Carlota airbase, where the military uprising started. But is that enough? No sign that other military bases have joined. And youths chucking rocks are not enough to overthrow a government. Forces loyal to the government of Nicolas Maduro confronted the demonstrators. While the president of the Constituent Assembly spoke by phone on state TV to say there was absolute tranquility throughout Venezuela. Maduro's supporters rallied outside the presidential palace in the center of the capital. One of his closest aides called Guaido not a puppet, but a muppet of imperialism. The US Secretary of State and Vice President have declared their support for the uprising, which many in Venezuela see as a coup attempt made in Washington.
Today we are with Nicolas, defending the country, telling the world that Venezuela is free, sovereign and absolutely independent, and will not bow to the attempts of US imperialism and its operators and lackeys.
Guaido addressed the swelling crowd, calling on those who could send a text to get all Venezuelans to rally to the cause. But it seems that although in recent months he has brought hundreds of thousands of civilians onto the streets, his Operation Freedom just doesn't have enough support amongst the Venezuelan military. The question now is whether the generals will try to negotiate a resolution to Venezuela's political standoff, or whether Maduro will use the force of the state to crush his enemies.
Lindsay Hilson reporting there, and I can now speak to local journalist Virginia Lopez, who joins us over an internet link from Caracas. Virginia, can you tell me what you're seeing and hearing at the moment?
Well, we're basically waiting to see what's going to happen in the next coming hours. This is a very fluid situation. We were all woken up by surprise this morning with the news that not only Guaidó, but also Lopez, who had been under house arrest for a couple of years now, were at the military base asking for people to join them in an effort to oust Maduro. I've just seen images of both of these leaders, Guaidó and Lopez, making their way to what seems to be the presidential palace, flanked by thousands of supporters. So again, this is a very fluid situation, and I guess we just need to see what's going to happen in the coming hours.
So what do we know about them going to the presidential palace?
Very little. We've just basically, like I said, there's just clips coming on local media and on social media of the two of them making their way to the presidential palace. We've also been seeing images of government supporters surrounding the presidential palace. So if anything, I think, we could be a couple of hours away from a clash in the streets.
We heard Juan Guaidó there in Lindsay's piece saying courageous men have responded to our call, but have enough people responded to the call of the opposition?
Yes, we've seen, like I said, we've seen thousands of supporters taking to the streets. We've also seen, which is unprecedented, a heavy military presence surrounding these two leaders. In the past, there had been individual defections, but we hadn't seen, certainly not low-ranking soldiers in the streets, and certainly not standing side by side with Guaidó or Lopez. Lopez, like I said, had been on house arrest, so the fact that he's in the street walking freely is very significant.